Speaking of everyone looking and acting and talking and dressing exactly the same, we're not going to review NXT this week because it wasn't worth it. Gee, Manelli Shelley. I don't know what they expect to get out of that program now, because if they're going to do that, why don't they just do a developmental television program at the Performance Center and put it on TV in Orlando and Tampa and run some spot shows around there to get the guys some experience, and take the national television time they have on the USA Network and attempt to do something with it that might push their main roster talent, which needs all the help that it can possibly get. I mean, is this a productive endeavor to give a substandard television show with talent that's so green they're phosphorescent in some cases, and put them on national TV before they're ready to be seen in regional syndication? What do you think?
I know the positives and the negatives. I mean, the positives are, of course, the money that you're getting from the USA Network to air the show, but the negatives, which are short-term and long-term, like you said, you're exposing a lot of people that shouldn't be exposed to a wide audience, to a national television audience right now.
Yeah.
Not like these people won't be ready. Some of them will be ready in a little bit of time, some of them in a few years, but to put that show the way it is on TV right now, for every Braun Breakker, there is just tons of other people you don't give a shit about because they're not ready. And I don't understand, again, other than the USA Network money, that's a really counterproductive television show at this point.
Well, but no, I'm not saying give up the money. I'm saying if they went to the USA Network and said, hey, we're going to change your program on Tuesday nights, instead of giving you Grayson Waller, we're going to give you fucking Drew McIntyre or anything. You think they're going to say, oh, God, no. No, I'm talking about bring that block of television time into the main roster fold some kind of way with guys that are on your main roster that you're not. Is there anybody on the main roster that they're not utilizing to the fullest? Well, I'm sure there is, but something. Because here's the when OVW was running the developmental program, the attitude from the office was they didn't want us to be on television anywhere except in our territory. To the point where, because Bill Behrens was going to syndicate us at one point for the per inquiry spots, the 1-800 buy this shit. You get a check when somebody calls it up, blah, blah, blah. And they, oh no, we don't want people to see Randy Orton. We don't want people to see John Cena until they're ready. Well, they were better at that point than half these guys are on NXT now, and they put them on the USA Network on purpose. And so they've completely revised their internal thinking. It does a disservice to a lot of the guys if they're seen before they're ready, because people in their minds form an opinion of them. I've been watching wrestling fans, smart fans, and regular fans for almost 50 years in person. And I remember what it was like when I was one, when, that's why the territory system helped foster growth of talent, because whenever a guy would start out in a territory and you saw him from when he was a rookie and he was green and he's klutzy and he couldn't get his shit together because he's 19 years old or whatever. I saw Terry Gordy when he just turned 16 and he was the shits. But when you see guys like that, you form an opinion of them in your mind. So the guys that started in a territory, until they left and went away, they never got over. Now, there were exceptions. That Danny Hodge, he was Olympic gold medalist. Danny Hodge was never a fucking klutz, or not silver medalist. It was never a klutz. And he was the fucking baddest ass in the NCAA. But Tommy Rich, it took him they had to shove him over because he had 2 left feet when he started. And he teamed with Tojo. And it was just, he was the baby face that got the shit kicked out of him. But then finally they started using him, but then he went to Atlanta and became the hottest babyface in the business because nobody'd seen him and he'd had 5 years experience or 4 or whatever it was. A lot of times the territories, a guy would get started in his home territory or wherever he broke in, and then he would be sent out or go away or get booked somewhere else and come back a couple of years later bigger or with more hair or a different gimmick or grown up in some kind of way. And even then, guys, I mean, Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson never drew money in the one territory that they both started in, the Memphis territory. They worked there many times. They were used well. But if you talk about great money drawing tag teams in wrestling in Memphis, they didn't draw like the Fabs. They didn't draw like Tojo Yamamoto and Jerry Jarrett, because the people there had seen them since they started in their very first matches, and it just didn't click. But everywhere else, they dwarfed those other teams. And there's similar examples of that. So the point I'm making is, no, we didn't want OVW television to be on national cable TV because it would have done a disservice to the guys that were training. We tried to get international clearances where we get paid some money for it, and they didn't want us to do that in the office, so they paid us some money to turn down the deal that we had. And we wanted to get on the Channel Americas, the weak stations of the world, for the commercial income. They didn't want us to do that because they didn't want the guys to be seen. Okay, so pay us a little extra money. But no, Braun Breakker's bulletproof. He's got such... It's all about the charisma. There's been guys with as good or better bodies, even though his is great. There's been guys as good or better athletes. They've recruited people from the NFL and all kinds of sports. There's been guys that can talk better. But nobody has that package plus the genealogy and the bloodline and just the natural charisma, what he does with it. And the idea that he's already got of wrestling from watching his dad and knowing what to do, because you can see him doing the same things his dad used to do when he was a rookie. So he's almost bulletproof. He's ready to be seen now, although it sure would be great if he'd been somewhere, as we mentioned, working West Texas for a year and a half. Nobody knew he was there, and then he comes in now, in a year and a half from now, how good's he going to be? And that's the first time you see him. Nevertheless, most guys aren't bulletproof when they're just starting out and they're green and they're young and whatever. So this is a big show for a lot of these people to be on. And I guess I've read they're trying to the Toxic Attraction, Mandy Rose and Gigi Allen and Jane Wayne Gacy, for the young men. They're going to try to push them as one of the top. I mean, the young men, can't you just get on PornTube or whatever if you're that wanting to see attractive women approximately your own age? If you want to see a wrestling program, wasn't the Undisputed Era probably tops with younger guys because they were young guys that were doing cool shit?
All the stuff that I saw in wrestling as a kid that made me say, oh, this looks so cool. When you see Roddy Piper and Ric Flair there, you're like, oh, these guys look like they're having the greatest time. I wish I had friends like that. I wish I was their friend. That's one of the things that wrestling loses. It's one of the things AEW does better than WWE, because they let guys talk naturally and be themselves a little bit, good or bad, is that you need relatable heels that you could boo. You need relatable heels sometimes that you end up wanting to be like. You need things that young men find appealing and cool, and just a bunch of people like Vince McMahon and Kevin Dunn and people who are just trying to appease whatever thoughts they have, who are saying, yeah, we need more young girls. We need more, scantily clad women. I don't know. I don't think it's going to change the numbers of that show at all. I think it may go the opposite way.
Well, and here's, again, there's a track record of female talents getting over as, pin-up stars, as they used to say in the old days. But whether it was Missy Hyatt in the 80s, everybody went apeshit over Missy. But she was figured into main events where she was in the corner with guys. And she was a personality all on her own. She was in the corner with guys, figured into the main events, and she was more of an individual. There weren't 20 girls on the roster. So she was special. She stood out, and she was figured into main event angles. And then later on, and obviously Sable and Sunny, because they stood apart from the rest of the roster, and they were unique in their own way and pushed in their own for their own unique reasons.
But you know what else too? I mean, you look at Missy. Missy was a really effective promo. She was good in every role they gave her as a manager or valet. I think once they tried to make her a commentator without a Southern accent, they kind of lost the plot of what Missy Hyatt was. But Missy and Sunny, or Tammy, have a lot of similarities in that they were both big wrestling fans before they got involved, and they had instincts. You know, if you were going to send either one of them to ringside for a show you were booking, you know, you always worry because you worry, but you didn't have to worry as much as sending someone else out there. They had instincts. They kind of knew what to look for and when to do something, when not to do it. I don't know how many of the women today in NXT or being brought into the WWE system grew up as fans and understand what worked and what didn't. Some of them are fans. I mean, Carmella, I just saw a thing with her. Her dad was a wrestler, so obviously there's some kind of background there. But how many of them truly get what works and what doesn't the way a Missy or a Tammy did?
Well, and I mean, you could expand that because now it's been so long since they could see by example, you know, the proper things to do and not do and what works and what doesn't, that the guys don't really grow up with that knowledge anymore either. But you're right. Yes. The most of the women that get into the business these days were not lifelong fans like Tammy, like Missy, and Sable wasn't, and that's why she couldn't do anything except stand there. But not just talking about the women's talent, etc. The whole idea of the developmental program here again. When you're thinking that just because you have 3 hot girls, you're going to draw young guys to watch it, again, I'm even with it enough and not stuck in the past enough to know that these are not the days of the 1950s when for the raincoat crowd they could go see the scantily clad women wrestlers in the one-piece bathing suits get all sweaty with each other. You can turn on the internet or even your goddamn cable and see all you want to see of pretty women doing things you might want to see them do. So then it comes down to, does the male wrestling fan want to see the girls wrestle? And some they do and some they don't. And I think they're given a little bit too much of it. But I don't believe that just having an attractive tag team on the program is going to suddenly make a bunch of younger guys watch the show if they weren't watching it to begin with. And I think the Undisputed Era probably did.
Because how does it work?
That's my thought on that.
Because how does it work? Hey, man. Hey, Jim, have you been watching NXT lately?
No.
Oh, you gotta. Adam Cole's not there anymore. They got women. They got the hottest women. They just got hot women. They can't wrestle or anything, but they got hot women. And I mean, no more of the boring Keith Lees or Karrion Crosses or Adam Cole. Kyle O'Reilly will be gone soon. But they got the hottest women and so many lights.
It is better lit. I will say that about the program. It's much better. It's easier to see. Unfortunately, it's not even any easier on the eye.